What's up, everybody? Real Trader Joe here, bringing you the real-time trials, tribulations, and triumphs of a part-time trader in the retail investing age. And here we are. Great to see everybody. I know it's the end of the weekend, but I'm super hyped because today we are finally going to get to options mechanics. I've pretty much been saying since the existence of the channel that we're going to get to it, and now we're here. We're going to find out how all this options stuff comes together and how options actually get their value, and you're going to really start to understand what's under the hood when it comes to options. So let's not waste any time. Let's get right down to it and start drilling into options mechanics. Okay, now we're going to start off the theory presentation here with just a little something that I like to borrow from chess. It's called working backwards. If you haven't seen Grandmaster Maurice Ashley's TED Talk on that, you should, by the way. It's a great TED Talk. But we're just going to work backwards and say, okay, what happens at expiration? At expiration, all options turn into stock. Okay? That's all an option is the right to buy or sell stock at a certain price at a certain time, yada, yada, yada. So at expiration, all options turn into stock, and the long side's going to know whether the option is worth anything at all. So, for example, you have a 30 call on Pinterest, right? The right to buy 100 shares of Pinterest at 30 bucks. If Pinterest is at 35, that option has $5 of real value. Remember, in options parlance, that $5 is actually 500 because the buyer has the right to buy Pinterest at 30, and Pinterest is at 35, so it's got $5 of real value or intrinsic value. Now, one important thing to remember with this is, remember the buyer pays premiums. So if the buyer paid $7 and the option's only worth $5 of intrinsic value at expiration, the buyer's actually out $2. So just because an option has some value at expiration doesn't necessarily mean that the buyer is profitable by any stretch. Options that have intrinsic value at expiration usually get exercised. Now, what do I mean by exercised? I mean the short side usually delivers their end of the bargain because the option is worth something. Okay, now all you astute option students out there are probably asking the question, alright, so at expiration we know whether an option has some intrinsic value or not, but how's an option's price determined if it's far out in the future from expiration? In other words, how do we know what an option is currently worth? Well, I thought we'd just work backwards. Let's walk through an example. So let's say you have that same 30 call on Pinterest. Pinterest is at 35, so it has $5 of intrinsic value, and your friend comes up and says, hey, I want to purchase that option from you. So that option has $5 of intrinsic value, so you're going to want at least $5. But if it has about a month left to expiration, you're going to want more than $5 because the option has some time left, so you're going to want value for that time. That time value, in other words, value that could possibly turn into intrinsic value, is called extrinsic value. All extrinsic value is time value. It's value that could potentially be worth something in the future. So let's say you give it to your friend at $7. You're going to want $5 of the intrinsic value that you already have, plus $2 in compensation for the remaining time. So we can kind of think of an option's current value as just intrinsic value plus extrinsic value. And this extrinsic value is the hopium that all these buyers are smoking when they buy out-of-the-money options. It's what makes options so profitable for sellers, because you sell somebody an option full of extrinsic value and then that all ticks away until at expiration the option's not worth anything anymore. All that extrinsic value, all that potential is gone. Okay, so really quickly guys, just some options terms to be aware of. In the money is an option which has some intrinsic value. It doesn't matter if it's 2 cents or $2. A 30 call option on Pinterest with Pinterest at 35 is going to have $5 of intrinsic value, and that's going to be in the money. Out of the money options are options which don't have any intrinsic value at all. In other words, their value is based purely off of time. So a 30 call option with Pinterest at 25 is an out of the money option. Options that are at the money are options which are on the fence. They're not in the money, they're not out of the money. Now, in a perfect world, that would be a 30 call option on Pinterest with Pinterest at 30 exactly. However, if Pinterest was at $30.01, technically that option the 30 call would be in the money, but it's for practical purposes at the money, right? Because stocks change value all the time. So I'd say within $1 on certain stocks are going to be at the money options, even if they are technically slightly in the money or out of the money. They're considered at the money by most options traders. Okay, so here we are once again in the Tastyworks platform, and I'll first show you guys an example of an in-the-money option, okay? So this 45 call, which we are short on Corsair, is in the money. In other words, I have to sell 100 shares at 45, and Corsair is last traded at 45.23. So this is an option which has some value, 23 cents of intrinsic value to be exact, and so this is an in-the-money option. If we go to the chart over here, or the table, you'll see what I mean. In the money are all options above this line right here. The 45 call is in the money because it has some intrinsic value right now. Conversely, the 50 puts and 55 puts are in the money options, or options which have intrinsic value, because if you have the right to sell Corsair at 55 or 50, that's worth something with Corsair at 45.23. So you can kind of take a look at some of these real life examples. This 60 call is all extrinsic value. It is an out-of-the-money option because Corsair is at $45, and nobody in their right mind would buy Corsair at 60 bucks with Corsair at 45.23 last traded. So that 355, 385 is all extrinsic value and will expire worthless at expiration if Corsair does not hit $60. One other thing to keep in mind here with this 45 call option on Corsair, the buyer could technically exercise me right now and I would be assigned as a short seller. So I don't know if I've talked about assignment yet, but all assignment is just having the brokerage come up and say, hey, the long side of the contract has exercised you, and as the short side, we are now officially assigning you to deliver on your product. It's basically a formal call by the brokerage to deliver on the obligation that you are assigned as the short seller. Only a short side can have assignment. The long side always exercises, the short side is always assigned to do the task that they are obligated to do if the long side chooses to exercise. So just something to keep in mind when you hear somebody say or talk about assignment. In this case, I could be assigned on the 45 call, but remember, just because options have intrinsic value doesn't mean the buyer is actually profitable. In fact, if we go to this option, you'll see at expiration the buyer has a long way to go because we got $6 and some change for this option, so it has to go to 45 and then a lot farther, probably about 51 and change. So remember, just because options have intrinsic value does not mean you are profitable on them as a buyer taking the long side. Well guys, we did it. This is part 1 of the options mechanics completed. So you guys are now armed with the knowledge of how an option's present value is actually determined. It's just intrinsic value plus extrinsic value. That's it. If you guys want to look into this more, you guys can look up what's called the Black-Scholes options pricing model, which gives a really detailed analysis and formula of how an option's current value is actually calculated, but this is a simplified version of it and will help us when we try to understand the options Greeks in the next video. The next video is going to be about how option values change with fluctuating market dynamics, but in order to understand how option values actually change, we have to understand what they're comprised of first, which is what this video was all about. So I hope you guys appreciated this drive-by lesson on option present value, and I hope that it serves you well in the next video. If you like what you saw, please comment, subscribe, do all the lovey, fluffy stuff to the like buttons and all the buttons on the pages, even the refresh ones. Gotta manipulate that view count because I'm not an institution and can't manipulate stocks. So again, hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you have any feedback, please leave it in the comments. I am hungry for that at the moment with this channel in its fledgling stages. So that's going to be all for me, guys. I'm going to go ahead and sign off, and I'll see you next time. Peace.